Hi, my name is Shelby Rodriguez, and this is my social issues presentation for COM 1010 Summer Week 5 Week 2. My issue that I'll be talking about today is gender pronouns in the workplace. And while this may not be one of the more pressing issues in social climate today, this is an issue that is present in our workplaces and places everywhere, all around, including dormitories, including workplaces, including offices, and even in restaurants and places. One of the biggest reasons that I brought up pronouns in the workplace is that I've watched a friend be discriminated against for that, and I've also seen that in different places and not in others, and I feel like that's really empowering, as well as I've seen the lack of that in other workplaces and having someone trying to uncomfortably force that into the situation when they're not sure if the person listening is receptive of these ideals is problematic. Um, and so, therefore, I believe that pronouns should be implemented in the workplace and should not be shoved in someone's faces, but it should be a subtle impact that's thrown over in courses of varying degrees. So, for instance, it could be on a nameplate, it could be on a name tag, it could be on your desk or a sticky note, or it could be on your letter, your sign off on your email. There are different various ways and reasons that you could use correct identifying pronouns for yourself and for others. Um, what are pronouns exactly are the identity that which someone holds for themselves about their own gender. For example, I identify as she, her, and there are people that identify as they, them, and him, he, him, or she, they, he, they, so forth and so on. There are different pronouns for different areas in life and different binaries, and so people are not always binary, some people are non-binary and non-conforming, and that's okay. And I believe that having this in the workplace and being available and ready is such an important issue, as well as because the amount of people that are in the workplace that use identifying pronouns is growing larger each day and growing more important each day. For example, all people, whether they are trans or non-trans or cisgender, whether they are men or women or non-binary, all people can choose whether or not they use pronouns to go by or what pronouns that they use to go by. About 3% of people between the ages of 18 to 35 identify as gender neutral, and according to a 2017 Harris poll commissioned by the GLAAD LGBTQ advocacy group, advocates expect that the percentage to increase as younger generations who are even more open to gender identity enter the workforce. Indeed, a Pew Interview research study shows that earlier this year found that Generation Z, 35% of those between the ages of 13 and 21 in 2018 said they know someone who identifies as gender neutral pronouns, and 59 said forums online and profiles should offer people another way to identify other than man, woman. And that's in the Chicago Tribune. And I think that's really important because not only is it important just in the workplace, but it's everywhere. Being able to identify as how you feel and how you feel gendered is important because it's a part of your identity. And if you're not comfortable with your own identity in the workplace, you're not going to be comfortable helping people. If you're in the service industry, you're not going to be comfortable filing paperwork in your own industry. And it's very important in the workplace. And it's not as pressing as other issues. However, it's such a mainstream baseline issue that it comes down to the gender and the feeling and the happiness of someone and the comfort in their own workplace. And not comfort as in a luxury, but comfort as in they feel accepted and welcome and able to work in that place. Beyond that, they can be used in various ways. I've seen this personally with one of my friends in a former workplace in which I used to work, where they identified as she, they, and they were told no, they weren't allowed to. They weren't allowed to have the nameplates when the rest of the areas that were adjacent to where we worked allowed them to do so. And so when they were told that they were not allowed to, this became an issue, and it's also a Title IX break, on top of the fact that it truly made them feel unwelcome and unwanted and unseen in their workplace, and I feel like that's really awful and unfair. And it's so simple to have just she, they, him, he, him, she, hers, they, them on any nameplate to which gender pronouns they prefer. And that way it's not as hard when someone feels so left out for being identified incorrectly and not being able to speak up for themselves, or having to shove that in a conversation when people don't know which one to say. And so that can be a very big issue on top of bathrooms. So for instance, in the place that I used to work, my boss saw that the bathrooms were men and women, but there was no difference between the two of them, and it seemed outrageous. And so she had the signs replaced to have individual restroom, which I feel is very important because it's gender neutral. It doesn't harm anyone. It doesn't make anyone feel excluded, and also doesn't lead a misleading conception into which there would be urinals when there's not. And that's a really big ideal. And these small things that are in the workplace add up into bigger issues that combine into a bigger identity crisis within the workplace, which is so important Because if you're not comfortable where you work, you're not going to do a better job. You're not going to want to work as hard for somewhere you feel like doesn't accept you. You're not going to want to be somewhere that they don't accept you either. And that's why it's really important. And it's a very simple conversation. It's a very simple task, and it doesn't hurt anyone. It's not forcing anyone. But if you are meeting someone and you're not sure of their gender pronouns, you're not sure how they identify, it's easy enough to glance down, look at their name tag or look at their nameplate in front of their desk and see what it is that they personally identify as and use those correct pronouns. Beyond this, the experience of being misgendered can be hurtful, angering, and even distracting. The experience of accidentally misgendering someone can be embarrassing for both parties, but causing tension leads to communication breakdowns across the team and customers. This brings to my next point, that if there is not proper identification in the workplace and proper gender pronouns in the workplace, then it can lead to accidentally misgendering someone who's been open about what they want to be gendered as, even if they don't have the nameplates, and that can lead to more issues if someone says he, him, when they identify as they, them, and they feel offended, and that comes up to another conflict in the workplace that has to be dealt with by the workplace, can become another issue, as well as if an issue arises, it makes the other person with the non-binary pronouns feel miswanted or mistreated for having those pronouns. And that can be a big issue as well. Where that can be applied. This can be applied in simple conversation, as well as having a moment as to which you take a deep breath and you talk to them and you look at their pronouns and you see what they identify as well as just talking. And if there is not a really already available name tag or a way to subtly put up a pronoun, but being able to talk in conversation, such as, "Hi, my name is Shelby Rodriguez and I identify as she, her." And that's okay. That's fine. It's when you're talking to someone and the person who identifies as non-binary doesn't feel comfortable coming forward with their pronouns, but then gets misgendered and then feels worse about being misgendered, becomes the issue. And that's where things kind of go awry. Employers must be cognizant of the laws they implicate in the treatment of the transgender individuals in the states and cities where they operate and can have employees. Correct pronouns usage is just one of the many issues that are implicated by protections against gender identity discrimination and harassment in the workplace. This is from the Nat Law Review over the new pushes for different gendered requirements in law and appeals. And so this, for those legalities issue, comes down to whether or not this is ethical and whether or not it's allowed. And so this comes down to different types of cases that have been had over whether gender issues are more important or sex orientation issues or LGBTQ issues. And this comes down to that the mistreatment is simply unacceptable and it's discrimination, bottom line. And that's from the Nat Law Review. However, the main solution that I've come up with and that I really wish to implement in other places is to have very subtle and consistent ways of identifying pronouns around the workplace, such as having name tags or having stickers or being able to outwardly say that or having that somewhere in the script. Or one of the more important and newer ways that we found that people can identify their genders is when they're signing off on emails and having their sign tag be like Shelby Rodriguez, woman of finance, and she, they. And that's a very important way to do that because it not only allows that in person, but also over email exchange to be identifying, especially when pronouns are more heavily used online and in typing and in writing as well. And so it's a very good idea. And so Forbes magazine did an article about this, and not only just the emails, but just the pronouns in the workplace period. And it said, "For me, the most challenging situation is the correct pronoun when a person does not want to be referred to as he or she, but rather prefers a general new pronoun such as they, them, or their. Thanks to my elementary school teachers, these common gender-neutral pronouns are confusing. I am sure my teachers had the best intentions when they taught me the word they was plural, but today they is now recognized as a grammatically correct singular pronoun." And that's from Forbes magazine's piece on this issue. And I feel like that's really helpful, not only just to see where that comes from, but also that it's willingly and open around in the area. And that was my speech. Thank you.